Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by James O'Toole, author of Music on a Mac. James, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me on the show, Paul. Really appreciate it.
Are you ready to get started?
Yeah, I am ready whenever you are.
All right, question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
I would say that definitely have a plan of attack. Try and allocate a solid block of time to writing, whether it's regular short periods or a longer stretch of days or even weeks where you can focus just on writing your book. And the planning just covers, the time to actually write the book, eliminating distractions, try and get everything down in one hit as quickly as you can without editing too much. Just don't be afraid to go off on a tangent now and then to add to the structure if inspiration strikes along the way, but just really concentrate on getting that first draft out as quickly as you can in sort of one unbroken section as much as possible anyway.
Absolutely. One of the mantras that I always teach my clients is done is better than perfect. Just get it out there.
Oh, absolutely, because it's if you're a perfectionist like I am, it's very difficult to not sort of stop and edit along the way, but it really does sort of take away any sense of momentum, which is super important. I think just getting that first draft down and figuring out exactly what you want to achieve and at least getting a first version of that done and complete will really help build up momentum and really help you get things moving to completion, which is, of course, the objective in the end.
Well, and that's why I always say that's why we pay the editors the money, right? They get to do the slicing and dicing, and they can clean it up. But our main thing is to get that content out there, get it out, send it to the editor, and let them clean it up from there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just concentrate on the content, getting that right in terms of the structure and getting out what you want to say with your book, and let someone else, do the really technical side of it. That's what they're paid to do. They're experts at it. So let them do their job. You do yours. Let them do theirs.
Exactly. You got to run your book like a CEO. You got your people for your formatting, your book cover design, if you're using a publisher, but just utilize those talents and just get it out there.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle as well. The thing about design, especially, I think, is really important. There's no substitute for getting a professional designer to format and design your book and someone who's experienced with publishing too, preferably, because there are certain conventions that are fairly important to follow, and there's a lot of different formatting options depending on how you're publishing, whether you're publishing in print or electronically. I'm quite fortunate as I actually work as a graphic designer and have done for 20 years, so I can do all that myself. But if that's not a skill set that you have, then you really need to get someone on board who knows what they're doing as far as that goes and can do a professional job for you, because you only get one chance to make a first impression.
Yeah, it reminds me of my favorite musical, Hamilton. You only got one shot.
Yeah, absolutely, and it really is worth it. I mean, you want to present your work in the best possible light, and again, there's people that do that for a living. They've got a lot of experience, and even if you can learn some of the software packages yourself, that's great. But you're still not going to be able to do it quite as well as someone who's been doing it for a living for years and specialising in that field. So. That's one area that I don't think people should skimp on. And, of course, that's something I've actually helped a couple of other authors with that, just preparing their manuscripts and also, websites and stuff like that. It was nice to be able to do that for my own book. Of course, I got a couple of people to look at it as well. So it wasn't, there was definitely some outside perspective too. I wasn't, it wasn't done in a bubble, which is also important.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
I think it depends on whether you're trying to get published by an independent publisher or a mainstream publisher, or whether you're self-publishing. So if you're trying to get published through a publisher, there's a lot of challenges with that. You know, you've got to pitch your work, you've got to figure out who might be the best fit for your work, and you've got to be prepared to face rejection probably more than once. So you need a thick skin. You know, the other thing is once you do have your manuscript accepted by a publisher, like lead times can be quite long. There's a lot of steps in between. Having worked as a designer and also worked in the publishing industry a little bit, you know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done before the book actually is, you know, printed and released, if that's, you know, if that's happening. But even in electronic form, there's still a lot of work to go through, the design and formatting and everything. So I think, you know, you've got to be prepared. It might be a year or so before you see your book in print, even once you have found a publisher that's agreed to publish your work. So you also need to seek advice from experienced authors, you know, get legal representation and speak to anyone else you can who's connected to the publishing field to make sure that you're getting a reasonable deal if you're fortunate enough to get a publishing deal, without having unrealistic expectations too if you're a first-time author. If you're self-publishing, you know, it's not that difficult to get published now. There's a lot of different avenues to get your material out there, but again, you know, you need to make sure that it's professionally written and edited and presented. You know, just try and put your best foot forward. There's a lot of different avenues, as I said. You know, there's Amazon, Kindle, but basically, you know, there are some areas where, by all means, do as much as you can yourself, but don't skimp on the presentation and the editing, just to make sure that you're presenting something that's really put together pretty well.
And with your book, did you go the independent route or did you go through a publisher?
I've done it all independently, mainly because I've had a fair bit of experience in the publishing field and also being able to do all the design and social media accounts and website and everything. So for me, I knew I could get it done a lot quicker myself, from like starting the writing of the book, the layout, design, getting the formatting completed, like basically having it ready to publish. I think it took me all up about 2.5 months, which was pretty quick. So I knew I could do that in between my freelance work as a designer. I had a block of time where I thought I can get this done if I really knuckle down. So that's what I did, and I've basically done it completely independently. So I do have some ideas about branching out and possibly even, you know, helping other authors. I've got an umbrella company kind of set up called Creative Life Tech, which, you know, I'm thinking about writing another book fairly soon, and branching out into, you know, different fields. Like, you know, obviously this is about music and recording, setting up a Mac-based home studio, but you know, with the design experience and also songwriting experience, there's other avenues that I might explore, and also just art as well, illustration, that kind of stuff. I do a lot of Photoshop work, so that's something that I know a lot of people are interested in working in. So yeah, there's lots of options to expand from this first effort. So yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that worked well.
Okay, well, yeah, when I first launched, I ran a few Facebook ads and sort of gave a bit of a discount on the price, you know, just for the first 2 weeks, and that definitely got a couple of sales straight away. Now, the other thing I also do is I've set up a fairly sort of straightforward website where I now give away the first 20 pages of the Music on a Mac ebook in exchange for an email address. So this helps people get a feel for the book's contents. If they don't buy it soon after, I can then offer them say 20% off discount and a follow-up email. So I've got Aweber with an automated follow-up series all set up to handle that. So it's very, very easy for people to find the website, see what the book's about, get a 20-page sample. And I have found that, you know, people have downloaded the 20-page sample, which is literally the first 20 pages of the PDF ebook, and then come back and purchase the full thing. So I think, you know, sometimes you've got to give away a little bit of content just to get people interested in what you're doing, and yeah, hopefully they'll pick up the rest.
Let's talk about your favorite book. So, what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Okay, this is a pretty easy one for me. The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield is is a book that I read quite a few years ago, but I just absolutely love it. I love his approach. I think any author or any creative person can benefit from reading it. There's so many things that distract you from doing creative work. Obviously, day-to-day living and all that kind of stuff can be a factor. And at the end of the day, you just have to sit down and do the work required. There's all sorts of resistance, as he talks about in the book, which manifests itself in the form of distractions, procrastination, doubts, bad habits, lots of other things. But I was so fired up after reading it the first time. I actually emailed him directly to tell him about how inspired I was by it, and he actually replied, which was awesome. And I've actually managed to cross off a few other things on the list since then, including recording and releasing a solo album of music, and switching to a full-time freelance graphic design career. So it can definitely help.
And for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Okay, again, this one was pretty easy too. That's a good question. I've had this quote up on my wall in my studio for many years and still find it quite useful. So it's actually Calvin Coolidge, and it's, "Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent." Now, I really like that because I just think it's, I believe in it completely. I think that when the going gets tough or progress seems slow, that's a quote that I just refer back to time and time again. It just keeps me inspired to keep on going and working. I've done a lot of work as a freelance music journalist, as well as writing about setting up studios and so on. And one of the common elements was that there was sort of roughly a 10-year battle to achieve success to the point where they could sustain themselves financially, just through music and a lot of sacrifices along the way. And had they thrown in the towel or quit sort of 6, 7 or 8 years in, then they never would have made it. I've seen a lot of talented people who really could have done anything if they just stuck at it, but just didn't quite have the discipline or the will to follow through. So I think that quote is one I just keep going back to all the time, and I think it served me well.
Yeah, that's a quote I'm very familiar with as well. It's one of my favorites because that is what separates you from other people. And I'll give you an example. It took me 10 years to get my bachelor's degree. And without persistence, there was no way that I could have gotten that degree because it was just one semester after the other, working full time, going to school part time, and then eventually going to school full time that final year. And you have to have persistence and you have to be able to embrace the grind, not only to get a degree, but also for your career, for your job, because it takes a lifetime to become an overnight success. And the main ingredient that you need is that persistence.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And to do that, to put in a 10-year commitment, I mean, you've really got to want to do it, but also you've got to have that drive to do it. So I take my hat off to anyone who's spent that long, doing a bachelor's degree or whatever it might be that they're specialising in, like yourself. I mean, that's an impressive commitment, and it does, it is just persistence, because there's always going to be times where things get tough for any number of reasons, but you just have to push on through and not give up, which is not always easy, but if you want it badly enough, you'll do it. And there's sadly there's no shortcuts, like you said. 10 years to be an overnight success is pretty common, I think, and it's the people who actually do that and get through that actually do end up getting where they want to be. So not easy, but definitely worthwhile.
Yeah, the mantra that I used as a running joke when I always tell that story is, yes, you can, 10-year plan.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I might have to note that down. I think it takes a lot of foresight to plan 10 years ahead, though. I mean, that's not easy. But if you do and you stick to it, when sort of, doubts creep in or distractions or, other things sort of try and steer you away from that path, you just come back to that plan and stick to it. It's not to say that I think you should, blindly follow one path without deviation over that long either. I mean, obviously, you can adapt your approach as well, and if something's not quite working the way you want it to, there's nothing wrong with fine tuning it and trying a slightly different tack, with that still having that overall goal in mind and the plan and as the basic framework. But certainly, just persisting anything worthwhile takes time. Be nice if you could, do things really, really quickly, but it's not usually the case.
James, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Okay, well, they can find me the Music on a Mac website. So it's just www.musiconiamac.com. There's a contact form there where you can email me directly through that, or you can email me at james@musiconamac.com. I also have a graphic design website at www.midnightsundesign.com.au. Again, there's a contact form on that site, or you can email me at james@midnightsundesign.com.au. So either one of those contact avenues, fairly easy to find. So, yeah, happy to chat to anyone. Or if anyone has any inquiries about either music on a Mac or graphic design for publishing, feel free to get in touch anytime at all.
James, I want to thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thanks very much for having me, Paul. It's been been really cool, so really appreciate it.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.